It's one thing to hear ignorant comments from strangers. But when it's your own family, sometimes, enough is enough.
I called out my mom's racism.
And she blew up.
I'm 18, and to be real with you, my mom's been openly racist for as long as I can remember. I wish I were exaggerating, but she says awful things about pretty much everyone who isn't white. She constantly makes nasty comments about black people, and she's especially hateful toward anyone she thinks looks Chinese, Japanese, Korean, you name it. She mocks the way they talk, the way they look, even says stuff like they shouldn't be allowed to drive.
It's disgusting.
I've always wanted to call her out, but growing up, I stayed quiet. She's one of those people who explodes if you challenge her and then flips the script to make herself the victim.
Most days, I just didn't have the energy to deal with the drama. But the other day, I finally snapped.
I was watching A Silent Voice, a beautiful anime that really moved me. There's this emotional scene where a hearing-impaired character tries to speak, and it hit me hard. My mom happened to be in the room, and right on cue, she made one of her usual snide remarks, something about how she couldn't believe anyone even noticed how the girl talked because Asians always sound like that.
That was it for me.
I turned to her and said, "Oh, right, I forgot I can't enjoy anything without you trying to make some dumb racist joke."
She goes, "Excuse me?"
And I said, "Yeah, you heard me." That's when she came back with, "What's it like having a fetish for Asian people?"
And I just lost it.
I said, "What's it like having such a dry personality that being racist is the only thing you're known for?" She exploded, said I had no right to speak to her like that because she's my mom. I told her I was treating her the same way I treat anyone who says stuff like that.
Doesn't matter if we're related.
She grounded me for being disrespectful, like I was the problem. So I packed a bag, walked out, and told her I was crashing at a friend's place.
No way I was going to sit around and take a punishment for standing up to racism. Now I'm getting all kinds of mixed feedback.
Some folks are saying I did the right thing and handled it exactly how I should have. Others are saying, "Yeah, you were right, but you should have just taken the punishment since you knew how she'd react."
Honestly, I don't regret saying what I said.
I don't think standing up to prejudice, especially in your own family, should come with consequences.
But I know how this goes. People love to say, "Pick your battles," like it's that simple. I just couldn't stay quiet anymore. Standing up to prejudice is never easy, especially when it's in your own home. But staying silent? That's not an option anymore. When family doesn't show up in your darkest moments, do they still deserve a piece of what's left behind? One father didn't think so.
They called me selfish for giving my dead son's college fund to the wrong kid. This whole situation has stirred up a ton of drama in my family, and everyone's now acting like I'm the villain. But let me explain my side before anyone judges. I'm a 40-year-old man, and back in 2024, I lost my son. He was only 14, and he passed away from a chronic heart condition. Losing him shattered me.
What made it worse? My family barely lifted a finger to support me during that time. When he was in the hospital, they didn't bring food, didn't stop by to give me a break, didn't offer to help with anything. All I got were empty words, no real action.
Even with all that going on, I opened up a college savings account for my son.
I added whatever little money I could.
It wasn't a huge amount, but it meant something. We used to talk about college a lot, it kept him going. Even when he was feeling down, he believed he'd pull through, that he'd make it and go on to live a normal life.
That college fund gave him hope. It gave me hope.
My son had this best friend, same age, known each other for 5 years.
That kid was like a light in his life. He came over all the time, made him laugh, encouraged him, kept him company through the worst of it. There were nights he stayed over just to keep my boy's spirits up. Honestly, that kid was closer to my son than most of our own relatives. Even after my son passed, his friend kept showing up. He'd bring handmade stuff he created in memory of my boy. We'd sit together, talk about him, even cry sometimes. It was real. It was honest. Then, last week, I was sitting with my family when my sister asked me what I planned to do with the college fund. I hadn't intended to bring it up, but since she asked, I told her the truth,
I plan to give the money to my son's best friend. The one who was there for him when it really mattered. Her face twisted, like I'd just said something disgusting. She told me her own son deserved that money because he's family. My mom backed her up and said I wasn't thinking clearly, and that my nephew deserved the chance to go to college too. They both acted like I owed this to them, like giving that money to someone outside the family was some unforgivable betrayal. I told them, look, this is my decision. I'm giving it to someone who actually mattered to my son. My nephew barely knew him. I don't see why he should benefit from my son's memory. But my sister wouldn't let it go. She started bombarding me with texts, calling me over and over, pushing her argument harder every time. Eventually, I snapped. Now my mom's in on it too, guilt-tripping me, telling me I'm turning my back on my own blood. It's been nonstop pressure, and honestly, I'm starting to feel completely overwhelmed. But here's what I'm thinking, if my son were still alive, that money would have gone to him. So now, I want it to go to someone who genuinely loved him, someone who was there when no one else was. Not some relative who barely spoke to him. Blood might make you family, but loyalty makes you belong. And sometimes, the real family is the one that shows up when it matters. Some gifts are earned and others are just taken for granted. But when a nephew destroys something precious, one dad decides to flip the script. My nephew smashed my son's gift, so I gave him his Christmas present instead. My sister and I have never been super close, we've always had this tension between us. But I try to be the bigger person and keep the peace when I can. We both have sons around the same age. Her kid is 14, mine just turned 12. For my boy's birthday, I splurged and got him this new gaming system he'd been dreaming about for months. He was thrilled. Seriously, he was glued to it every chance he got. Now, my sister? She's not great with money. I've had to help her out a lot covering bills, picking up stuff for my nephew. And I know her kid doesn't always get the best gifts, so this year, I wanted to do something nice. I bought the same gaming system for him and had it wrapped under my tree, ready for Christmas. Well, yesterday, my sister and her family came over. The kids asked if they could go play games. I said sure, just reminded them to be careful. About 30 minutes later, my son came running up to me, crying his eyes out. He didn't even have to say anything, he just led me to the stairs. And there, smashed at the bottom, was his brand new gaming system. Someone had thrown it from upstairs. When I asked what happened, he pointed right at his cousin. I looked at the kid and asked him straight up, "Did you do this?" And he just laughed and said it was a stupid baby toy and that he saw people destroy them online. I was stunned. I told my sister what happened and that her son needed to face the consequences. I also asked her to pay me back, this thing wasn't cheap. But she just shrugged. Said I shouldn't have left them unsupervised and that it was my fault. Then she had the nerve to say, "He'll get over it. It's not that serious." I looked over at my son, sitting on the floor, trying to piece together his broken gift with tears in his eyes, and that was it for me. I walked over to the tree, grabbed the wrapped console meant for my nephew, tore off the paper, handed it to my son, and told him to go set it up. My sister freaked out. She yelled, "Why are you making such a big deal? You had another one." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Yeah, that was his Christmas gift. But since you said it's just a dumb toy, you won't miss it." My nephew finally realized what had happened and started crying, saying I stole his present. I told him no, I gave your gift to the kid who didn't destroy his own. My sister screamed that she'd never speak to me again. I said, "Okay," and shut the door behind them. Now my phone's lighting up with texts from relatives saying I ruined my nephew's Christmas and that I'm being heartless. But honestly, I don't feel bad. That kid is 14, not a toddler. He knew exactly what he was doing. It wasn't some accident. And if my sister wasn't going to take responsibility, then I had to step in and make things right for my son. I don't have the money to buy another one, and I'm not going to reward bad behavior. So yeah, maybe I was petty. But I'd do it again in a heartbeat. When you break something precious, you pay the price. And this time? That price was Christmas. Babysitters are supposed to watch your kids, not get wasted.
But when a simple mistake leads to a major fallout, who's really to blame?
I fired my babysitter after she got drunk, but it was my fault. I'm a 38-year-old woman with 2 kids, a 5-year-old daughter and an 7-year-old son.
For the past 2 months, I've been hiring a 17-year-old girl as a babysitter.
She's always been really sweet, quiet, and incredibly good with my children. Honestly, I never had any major issues with her, just the usual small things that come up when dealing with kids. When she first started babysitting, I asked if there were any snacks or drinks she'd like me to keep around the house since she was here from 9 in the morning until 7 in the evening, Monday through Saturday. She mentioned that she really likes seltzer water, so I made sure to stock up on it for the first month. But, I have to admit, I kind of forgot about it after a while and stopped keeping it in the fridge. A few days ago, I bought some hard seltzer water for me and my husband. I didn't think much of it, I just tossed it in the fridge with the rest of the drinks. Around 2 in the afternoon, she texted me saying she wasn't feeling well. She mentioned she might need to head home early and asked if there was any way I could leave work a bit earlier to relieve her. I told her to try and hold out until the end of the day if she could. Not long after, she called me in tears, saying something was definitely wrong and she needed to go home.
That's when I realized she was drunk, like, obviously drunk.
It hit me that she must have drunk the hard seltzers I left in the fridge, mistaking them for regular seltzer water. I told her she needed to leave, and she walked herself home. The next day, she messaged me, clearly upset, saying she now knew the seltzers were alcoholic. She swore she didn't realize it at the time and told me she's never drunk alcohol before. Both her parents are alcoholics, and she actually has PTSD related to alcohol. She said she never planned on drinking at all, especially not while watching my kids. But I couldn't look past the fact that she got drunk while caring for my children. I told her not to come back, that she had put my kids in danger. She broke down crying, insisting she didn't know and that she would never drink around my kids, or ever, for that matter. She told me she really needed the money to pay for her driver's permit and that her family wasn't very well off. I just told her to find a real job and that it wasn't my fault she drank. My husband thinks I was way too harsh and says she did try to reach out when she first started feeling sick. Even my kids are upset that she's not coming back.
So, Reddit, was I wrong here?
I fired her for drinking on the job, but now I'm starting to wonder if I messed up. A mistake's a mistake, but when it involves your kids, it's hard to look past it.
Maybe this one was just too big to ignore.
Property lines are there for a reason. But when neighbors don't respect them, it's time to take matters into your own hands.
My entitled neighbors stole from my garden.
So I taught them a lesson they'll never forget. A few months ago, I moved into a detached townhouse. It's a rental property, and I'm leasing it for a year with the option to extend for another year, or maybe even buy it if things go well. The driveway sits right beside my neighbor's, and it's big enough to fit 2 average-sized cars.
About halfway down, there's a little path that loops around my house.
On one side of that path is my home, and on the other is a 3-meter-wide strip of yard that's all mine. From the very first day I moved in, my neighbors acted like my driveway was their personal space. They parked their cars there, used it to turn around, stored their junk, and even let their kids run around and play like it was some public playground. I tried the polite approach, asked them to stop and to keep their stuff on their own property, but that went nowhere. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I placed a few big plants along the driveway, set up a security camera, and hung up a bright red "No Trespassing" sign. That actually helped a bit, at least the cars stopped showing up.
But the real problem? Their kids.
These 2 boys, 5 and 7 years old, seem to have an endless amount of energy and absolutely zero respect for boundaries.
The last few weeks, with everyone stuck at home during quarantine, I've been working from home.
But these kids made that nearly impossible. They rang my doorbell multiple times a day, asking to play with my dog, wondering if I wanted to play with them, or just coming up with random excuses to bother me.
At first, I tried to be patient.
I asked them nicely to stop so I could work, but of course, that did nothing.
So I went to their parents, expecting a bit of understanding.
But all I got was the classic "boys will be boys," and it was clear they had no intention of setting any boundaries.
To keep my sanity, I finally just took the battery out of the doorbell. But that only made things worse. Now, the kids were running around my front yard, sprinting up and down the path by my house, banging on my windows, slapping on my doors, and even trying to open the gate to my backyard. This morning, they heard me back there and actually attempted to open the latch to get in. That was the last straw. I told them one more time to knock it off, and I made it very clear that if they kept this up, they wouldn't be playing with my dog anymore. That finally got them to leave, for a while. But, of course, it didn't stop. Their dad even came over to confront me, all puffed up like I was the one in the wrong. I told him straight up either keep his kids off my property, or I was going to plant some prickly bushes to make sure they learned to respect other people's spaces. He scoffed, but I was dead serious. I shut the door right in his face. So, I went ahead and did it. About a week after that little encounter, I planted a wall of blackberries and raspberries along the two sides of my garden that faced the driveway. I made sure they were about 30 centimeters from the edge so there were no overhanging branches that would cross any property lines. On the other side of that berry wall, I planted strawberries and tomatoes, nice and neat. If anyone wanted to get to those tomatoes or strawberries from the driveway, they'd have to either go right through the thorny bushes or walk all the way around to my front door. Not exactly something you'd do by accident. For about 2 weeks, things were actually peaceful. I still saw the kids in my driveway every day, but they didn't wander into the garden. I hadn't seen them running around my house anymore either, so I figured my little berry barrier was doing its job. That was, of course, until berry season started. My bushes were full of plump raspberries, and there were strawberries everywhere. That's when the neighbors really took notice. First, I caught the two boys right in the middle of the bushes, stuffing their faces with my raspberries. I marched them right back to their house and told their mom I'd caught them stealing and that if I saw it happen again, I'd be calling the cops. She just rolled her eyes and told me to grow up, but she did take them inside. It was quiet for a bit after that, until yesterday. I went out for a bit, and when I came back, I found the dad and his two boys smack in the middle of my garden, clearing out my bushes and picking through my plants. I didn't even bother confronting them, I just stood back, called the cops, and started filming. They didn't even notice me. 2 officers showed up about 10 minutes later, and they walked right up to my neighbors, catching them red-handed. They made it very clear that not only were they trespassing, but picking berries off my bushes was, in fact, stealing. I watched the dad's face drain of color, his eyes darting back to his house like he was hoping his wife would magically appear and bail him out. She didn't. The cops escorted them back home, and a while later, one of the officers came back to ask if I wanted to press charges. I asked if they thought my neighbor got the message. He smiled and said he was pretty sure the husband did, but the wife? Not so much. I decided to hold off on pressing charges, for now. But I did get an extra camera installed, one that covers the entire front garden and driveway. Now, they know I'm not playing around. If I catch any of them on my property again, the cops are getting called, and this time, charges will be pressed. Sometimes, the best fences aren't wooden, they're thorny. And they're just sharp enough to make a point. A playful nickname turns into a family standoff. But what happens when everyone's laughing except the people who weren't supposed to hear it? Pet names gone wrong, when jokes get serious. Alright, this one's a bit of a ride. I'm a 29-year-old African-American guy, and my girlfriend, let's call her Ella, is a 25-year-old white woman. We live in a pretty liberal area, and honestly, things have always been great between us and her family. That was until one of my pet names for her caused a major meltdown. So here's the backstory. Ella and I were messing around one day, just teasing each other back and forth. In the heat of the moment, I called her Mayo Mama. I swear, it was just a silly joke, but she found it hilarious. It kind of stuck, and before I knew it, it became my little nickname for her. She even embraced it, laughing every time I said it. Fast forward a bit, we were dropping off some stuff at her mom's place. Her mom doesn't get out much these days, so we brought the things over to help her out. We were all chatting casually, and I slipped up. I called Ella Mayo Mama right in front of her parents. I hadn't meant to, it just sort of came out naturally because I'm so used to saying it. Her parents went silent for a second,
and then things got really awkward. They started accusing me of being racist, saying that it was a double standard and disrespectful.
Ella jumped in right away, telling them to chill out and that she wasn't offended by it.
She even told them it was a joke and that they didn't need to speak for her.
But they weren't having it.
Her dad even asked me how I'd feel if she called me her chocolate daddy.
I actually laughed out loud because the way he said it was so serious it caught me off guard.
Ella was trying not to lose it too, but I could see she was on the edge of cracking up. I told him straight up I wouldn't care if it wasn't meant to be hurtful. But they wouldn't drop it, kept saying I needed to apologize and stop using the nickname.
Ella, on the other hand, doubled down.
She started calling me chocolate daddy just to mess with them, and honestly, it's hilarious. But now, she's been getting angry messages from her parents saying it's disrespectful and that I'm being inappropriate. I feel a bit bad that it caused so much drama, but Ella insists it's fine and that her parents are just overreacting. So here we are, stuck in this weird family standoff over a joke that, to us, is completely harmless.
Am I wrong for not backing down, or are they just blowing things way out of proportion? A joke's only funny if everyone's in on it. But when families can't take it, sometimes, the laughter just makes things worse. Family is supposed to be there for you, but what if they're the ones who pushed you away in the first place? This next story? It's about drawing the line. My pregnant, homophobic sister demanded free rent. Am I the bad person?
I'm 29 years old, and it seems like family drama has been my constant companion. My younger sister, who's 21, and I have never seen eye to eye. I came out as gay years ago, and once she hit 15, she started hurling hateful slurs at me, telling me I'd burn forever and spouting all the usual religious nonsense. Of course, she was the golden child, so mom and dad always took her side. She'd reduce me to tears, and my parents would just shrug and tell me to deal with it, then expect me to stay friendly with her.
Eventually, I cut all of them out of my life. Honestly, it was the best decision I've ever made.
About 3 years ago, I married the love of my life. I invited my parents to the wedding, but they didn't show no surprise, given my sister's behavior.
That no-show still stings every time I think about it. My partner, Phil, and I are lucky to have great jobs and live in a spacious home. Then, about a week ago, out of the blue, my parents and sister showed up at my door asking to talk. Side note, I still have no clue how they tracked down my address. They told me she's pregnant now and expect me to let her move in rent-free and cover every expense for her and the baby. Not a single I'm sorry came from any of them. I was floored, and my sister launched into a tirade about how our big house and good salaries mean we can easily help her out. I simply told them no. I explained that we already have Elle's 2 young half-sisters living with us, they have high-risk medical needs, so we don't have any extra space. They went ballistic, accusing me of choosing Elle's family over my own. I told them straight up, they're not my family. I reminded them of all the hurtful things they've done and said, but they just brushed it off, telling me to let it go and move on. That's when I asked them to leave. And honestly, even if a room opened up, I wouldn't want her here. Since then, I've been flooded with messages from relatives insisting I help her out. Whenever I point out how cruel she's been, they hit me with "be the bigger person," claiming this will bring the family back together. The kicker? If I don't help, my parents might have to dip into their retirement to cover her bills. To be fair, they were decent parents while I was growing up. By the time my sister started her nonsense, I was already living on my own. Some people argue that by helping her, I'd really be helping my parents, not my sister. Elle even suggested we could just send her some money, but I'm not comfortable with that either. So here I am, asking, am I the bad person in all of this? Just because someone's family doesn't mean they're entitled to your space or your kindness. Sometimes, no is the right answer. And that's a wrap on today's stories, proving once again that real life is sometimes stranger than fiction. If any of these hit close to home, drop a comment, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. We've got plenty more coming your way.